It's time to meet the person behind the persona. And this week, I'll visit with a popular Kansas television personality who is more than just another pretty face. She's a dedicated professional on a mission to keep you safe. After Texas and Oklahoma, no state is more dangerous for tornadoes than Kansas. That's why the job of television meteorologist is such an important and high-demand job. KSN's Lisa Teachman is the first woman to serve as chief meteorologist at a Wichita news station. And time and again, she proves herself worthy of the title. A native of Hayesville, Kansas, Teachman was educated at Wichita and Mississippi State Universities and then broke into broadcasting. She cut her weather chops at stations in Huntington, West Virginia, Baltimore, Maryland, and Kansas City, Missouri. Then, when KSN's longtime weather chief Dave Freeman retired, Teachman had the chance to replace him and move back home. Since then, she has proven to be a ratings winner for KSN and the go-to expert for Kansans wherever and whenever severe weather threatens. Coming up, we'll find out how she deals with the pressure, what fascinates her about the weather, and what life is like off camera for this queen of the green screen. Join me for a half hour of conversation with KSN's chief meteorologist, Lisa Teachman, one-on-one. Hello and thanks for joining us. I'm Victor Hogstrom, and it's a pleasure to welcome a very familiar face to the table. KSN Chief Meteorologist, Lisa Teachman. They call you the Teach.
They call me the Teach, that's right.
Why is that?
I think it's just become a nickname that the Teachmans have accumulated over time. When I worked in Kansas City with a gal named Alexis Del Cid, she said it all the time, so I think it really started to stick out when I worked there.
You are not teaching?
I do teach all the time, that's for sure. Not in a public school setting, but I love to talk and express what's happening with the weather.
Right. Now, you are originally from the area, grew up in Hayesville.
That's right.
Tell us about those growing up days and how did you become interested in becoming a meteorologist?
See, that's interesting. I think when my parents, the day they got married, they were destined to have a child that was a meteorologist, because while they married in New Jersey, when my dad was in the Marine Corps and he was stationed out there, they eventually made their way out here. But on the day they got married, Kansas and Oklahoma had a huge severe weather outbreak. So I think if the wedding had been in Kansas, who knows what might have happened with that wedding. Maybe it was delayed, maybe it was pushed up, who knows. But my dad's dad, my grandfather, was an amateur radio storm spotter. And when my dad got out of the service, when he got out of the Marine Corps, they moved back here to Kansas. They knew they wanted to have kids, and my grandfather was a storm spotter. My dad naturally became an amateur radio storm spotter, so I grew up being around it. I was always fascinated by the weather, but the weather scared me. Whenever the tornado sirens would go off, I would hyperventilate. I would grab all my Hot Wheels cars, all my Barbie dolls, throw them into a bag and say, okay, let's go over to Grandma's house, because they had the basement. Our house didn't have the basement. And my mom at times didn't know what to do with me. She says, I don't know what to do with this child. You know, do I need to give her tranquilizers or what? But my dad was usually out storm spotting with my sister around Sedgwick County with his storm spotting group. And what he saw, he would relay back to the county. And still to this day, he works with emergency management here in Sedgwick County.
So did you get to practice weather reporting? Or, I mean, just how did you develop this interest to have gotten into it?
It's interesting. In amateur radio, they had something called ATV, where you could see one person on one TV kind of communicating with another. We're talking about the 80s here.
Okay.
And sometimes my dad would pull my sister and I in, and we would just look at ourselves on TV, and we thought it was the coolest thing. But you know, when I was a kid, I didn't think meteorology was what I was going to do. there were different things that happened in the path of my life that kept pointing me in that direction. One of which was having the dad that was active in keeping our community safe as a storm spotter. But also in 4th grade, Mrs. Stewart still to this day will say, "Hey Lisa, I gave you your first gig." And I said, what do you mean? And she said, "Remember that time I assigned all of you to do a newscast? You were the weather person." So that was the first time, 4th grade. 5th grade, I took a tour of KSN with our school. Back then, Mike Smith, and I'm really good friends with Mike Smith to this day, he was the chief meteorologist at KSN. So I got to see weather data, I got to see KSN. So it was another one of those things where the universe was just pointing me in that direction, saying, this is what you need to do. But I wasn't listening. I thought I wanted to be an architect.
Oh.
In high school, I took a drafting class, and I did not like it. So I thought, okay, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go with my life? And I loved science. I knew science was something that I wanted to do, and the weather was fascinating. Growing up, I remember the Heston tornado, I remember the Andover-Hayesville tornado of '91, and I remember the '99 tornado that came right through the heart of Hayesville.
And you had 2 of them in Hayesville.
We had 2 of them in Hayesville,
Yes.
less than 10 years. My dad helped out with communications after both of those. So I got to see firsthand different people that I had gone to school with being impacted by these tornadoes. They lost their homes, many of them did. And it took a long time before our community had been rebuilt after both of those. But now Hayesville is thriving. It continues to grow even after those disasters of the 90s. But when I was a sophomore getting ready to become a junior in high school, I wrote to all 3 chief meteorologists in town because I was interested to see if television might be where I wanted to go. Ben Pringle, who was the chief at Cake at the time, invited me over for a day, loved it. And then I think it was divine intervention a month later, Dave Freeman wrote me this letter, and I still have this letter that says, "Come in with your guidance counselor, we'll get you signed up for an internship." And I remember talking to my counselor, Mrs. Hain, at Campus High School. She was so supportive of me. She drove me to KSN for that interview, and it completely changed my life.
And so you spent a lot of your time at KSN learning the weather.
Yes. All the time from I was a junior in high school through the time I graduated college. And the reason I went on the path that I did with college was because of my predecessor, Dave Freeman.
So how then did you, after Dave Freeman's experience at KSN, how did you prepare to be a meteorologist?
He prepared me from the moment I was 16 to the time I walked out of that office
What
into
did
my
you
first
do?
full-time job. I remember him having intern coaching sessions with us. He was dedicated to helping us along, not only teaching us the science of meteorology and some of the other things that you look at that help to enhance your forecasting, but when it came to those intern coaching sessions, he would sit and say, okay, get up there and do the weather forecast in front of the green screen. You would do it, and he'd say, okay, go ahead and do it again, but this time I'm going to stop you. So there's different things in how you hold your hands, how you look at the camera, how you communicate that I learned from him.
And the poise and personality and everything.
And the philosophy, too. The
right.
philosophy of you are there to root for the people and not the storms.
So did you major the business of meteorology and weather in college?
I did. And one day when I was talking with Dave and figuring out where am I going to go for college? Do I go to KU? Do I go to OU? My heart was kind of gearing myself towards OU, but I knew broadcasting was what I wanted to do. And you didn't get broadcasting at that time until your senior year, and I thought, that may take a little while. One afternoon, sitting in the Weather Center with Dave and we were forecasting, he leaned over to me and he said, you know, you could do this thing where you could go to Wichita State, you could be on campus, get your degree in broadcasting, but you can also get your degree from Mississippi State via correspondence. And I was always the type of person that I didn't feel like I needed to go into a lecture hall. I could teach myself. I was just that self-disciplined. And that's what I did. So I got 2 degrees from 2 universities within 4 years' time, from Wichita State and Mississippi State, a BA and a BS.
Wow.
I was busy.
Yes, you were.
This is why I'm never going back to school ever again.
But one good thing about it all, you left college without a student loan debt.
That's right. No debt at all.
How did that happen? unusual these days.
It is, it is. Well, living at home, that played a big part of it, so I didn't have the room and board, and it was great. I didn't want to necessarily leave home because I loved living with Mom and Dad, and I also went to Wichita State with a full academic scholarship. So I may have had to pay for a few books here or a few books there, but overall it was paid for. And I was also working pretty much full time at Walmart in Derby, which helped to supplement for the Mississippi State. Anytime I was able to get a certain type of loan, my mom was smart. She said, take that loan, put it into a CD. By the time you graduate, you have a little bit of credit, you pay it all off, and you may have some extra cash in your pocket, which I did.
Was she a banker?
She was not a banker. She was actually a secretary.
Oh,
she
wow.
was.
Very smart lady.
Secretary in New York City.
Wow, good. So, Lisa, what excites you today as a weather person?
The thing that I've always mentioned to a lot of the meteorologists that I work with, the moment I get inside and I start looking at the weather data, that excites me. I think it's almost like Christmas morning. You're looking at a weather event days in advance, and you get in and you're like, okay, what is this new data telling me? How is it going to change? What's happening now that can change what's going to happen? So I'm always interested to see how it's going to change.
That's as a weather person. So what excites you as a person?
As a
outside
person?
of weather now?
Oh, I love spending time with my husband and our 3 dogs. I am a huge animal lover. If I could have more dogs, I would. But the husband says, okay. You know, Jared says, I think 3 is probably good enough for now. That's part of my retirement plan when I get to that point. You know, those of us living in the country and just adopting stray dogs.
So tell our viewers something that they do not know about you.
Do not know about me.
You grew up in the area, you
I
left
did.
for a while, worked in some major markets. But what would you like them to know about Lisa Teachman?
She is always working. She is always dedicated to the viewers that she serves. I will be up at 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. I cannot sleep if we have severe weather that's going on. I just can't. I can't rest.
We hear a lot today about climate change. Your view?
A lot of people ask me that, and you know, I always say, hey, refer to a climatologist, because the climatologist is one that looks at trends over a certain time. I'm a meteorologist that looks at where the weather is going from here. And you know, one of the things with climate change is that it's become highly political. And it's almost like if you're not on this side, then you're on this side, or you're on this side or this side. And I don't like the fact that it has become political like it is. But when you do look at what's happening in the atmosphere, you know, if you think of carbon dioxide, you look at methane, you look a lot of these gases that are getting into the atmosphere, and they get energized, they heat up. Essentially, that is going to heat up the atmosphere. So basically my take when it comes to climate change is, you know, let's take a look at what we're doing now and what we can do to preserve our Earth for our children, our grandchildren, and future generations.
So we should be concerned about it.
I think we definitely need to take a look at what we're doing. And I think we need to protect what we have.
You are the first female chief meteorologist in the Wichita market. And of course, this is the largest market in Kansas.
Yes.
Other than Kansas City and Johnson County area.
Yes.
But you worked there.
I did
But you're
for
the first-
over 10 years.
How did that happen, being the first female chief meteorologist, and what does it mean to you?
Oh gosh, it means a lot. It's a huge responsibility. I remember when I was approached about becoming the chief at KSN, I had to think long and hard about it, because I knew the 77 counties that I would be covering over 3 states and 2 time zones, and the responsibility that that entails. We were really happy in Kansas City. My husband still has a great job up there that he works, you know, here in Wichita, but he also goes up to Kansas City for. But you know, when I was an intern at KSN, Dave Freeman used to tease me all the time, "You're my retirement plan." And I thought he was just joking with me. He was being truthful all of these decades later. One February afternoon, a couple of years ago, he called me up, and if Dave is calling you and not texting you or emailing you, you think something's wrong. And so I picked up the phone and I started talking to him, and he told me about his plans to retire, that he was going to retire and announce in about 5 days. And he said to me, "Nothing would please me more if you were to come back and fill my shoes. Can you do it?" And I literally moved heaven and high water in order to leave Kansas City and come here. Because being a woman and being a chief, a female chief in a market like Wichita, Wichita is the severe weather Super Bowl. We're up there with Dallas, Oklahoma City, Tulsa. I mean, these are some big, big markets. Only 8% of females across the country are chiefs. Only 8%, and to be looked at as, hey, you know, you're our person for this is huge. Right. It is huge. And it's an even bigger responsibility because this is where my parents live. This is where my father-in-law lives. This is where all of my friends and my family that I have grown up with live. So it definitely raises the bar for me personally when it comes to that responsibility.
So what has been the most challenging thing of your job so far?
Challenging thing. A lot of getting used to a larger geographic area with 77 counties.
Wow.
Is huge. And we could have sunshiny skies here in Wichita, but I could have a full-blown blizzard up in northwest Kansas, or I could have severe thunderstorms out in western Kansas that Wichita will never be able to experience. So it's almost like I have severe weather every single day. And this year in particular, it has been a lot. It's been relentless.
So how have the rapid changes in technology then helped you in your work, because you have a vast area to cover? How is it helping you?
When I was a little kid, I remember going to the National Weather Service and drawing with the grease pencil on the Doppler radar. And it was a green screen. You would see the little sweep that would go round and round. It was in a darkened room. Over time, I got to see the evolution of NEXRAD Doppler radar, and now we have dual polarization. The thing with dual polarization is the detail is so fine that we can see debris that's lofted up into the air, so that is huge. Also, from the time that I started as an intern, now, I didn't get to experience the teletype where they would have all these DIFAX charts that would come off and you would have to hand analyze with a colored pencil. That ended just as I was walking in as an intern. So everything's been over computer. As the internet has evolved, and I got to see that over the path of my career, now it's almost like we have too much weather information to get through, but not enough time to go through that weather information. And sometimes because you have information overload, it may make you second guess what you're looking at.
So the technology is it hindering or helping you?
I think it's helping, but there's also some things that hinder you too, where there's just too much information.
Too much information.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to see about how radar could change in the next 10 to 20 years, how the computer models are going to get better. Because the computer models today are so much better than when I started off as an intern. We have a lot more models to look at, but also they have become more fine-tuned.
So you've been with KSN for about 2 years.
Yes.
As the chief. What would you point to as your achievement to date?
My
that
achievement
you're
to
proud
date.
of? Yes.
There's a lot of stuff that I am so proud of with KSN. We have rebuilt our team. We have a strong team. We have changed a lot of the philosophy inside the weather department. We've also brought about a storm tracking vehicle, Storm Tracker 3. It's unlike anything else that Wichita or this side of Kansas has experienced. Up toward Kansas City, the 2 stations that I worked at there have had these chase vehicles, or these storm tracking vehicles, I should say. And I am a firm believer in having somebody with the eyes and the ears on the storm. And I think that goes back to my childhood, with my dad being a storm spotter. You can see certain things on radar, but you like to have that confirmation out in the field, and that is exactly what Storm Tracker 3 is all about. And I love the fact that we're getting out into the community with Storm Tracker 3 and so many other events around Wichita and in Kansas.
Now, your anchorman at Channel 3, Jeff, Herndon, is also from Hayesville.
Yes, he is.
Did you all grow up together? Did you know each other?
He's older than me. which
Well.
he loves to hear that every time I mention that. But no, I've always known of Jeff, and when he came to KSN, we were chatting about all the different streets that we lived on.
Right.
And we literally lived down the street from each other for a brief period of time. I think I was still in diapers, but I think he was out of diapers at the time.
You sure
And
you
then-
like to hear that?
Well, we all were at one time or another. But then he moved a few streets over, but he is, he graduated, several years earlier than I did. But he has the same feeling about Hayesville that I do, that it was a great community for us to grow up in. You could ride your bikes on the street, you could walk to school, and I think I received a wonderful education there in the Hayesville school system.
So, Lisa, if you were to describe yourself in a headline, what would that be? What would be the lead in that story, in that headline story?
I would probably say passionate. Passionate is probably the way to describe
About
it.
what?
Passionate about weather. Passionate about weather. I love talking about it. I love forecasting it. And I love going out and talking to school groups about the weather. I have a feeling we're going to see a lot of future meteorologists from around here.
Okay. So let's find out a little more about you through this game we're going to play.
Okay.
And I'll start a sentence and you can finish it.
All right.
The first one, my favorite kind of weather is?
Favorite kind of weather is fall weather. I love more the transitional seasons just because, yes, I love summer, I love spring, but I like fall because while we do have a secondary severe weather season, it's not as powerful as the spring severe weather season. As a meteorologist, you root for the people, not the storm. And I don't like those destructive storms. I have to forecast them,
Right.
but I don't like them.
So that would be your least favorite kind of weather.
But I prefer to have weather that I'm forecasting that is more active.
Right.
Sunny and 70 in San Diego would bore me. It would.
Good beach weather.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
My favorite thing about my job is?
Being able to talk about weather.
My least favorite thing about my job is?
Gosh, I don't think there is anything that I dislike about my job. I mean, I've been in this business for 17, 18 years now, professionally on air. And if I didn't love it, I don't think I'd still be doing it.
That should make Steve happy. Steve South. My greatest source of comfort is?
Being with my family. Being with my family. Being at home with my husband, with our 3 dogs, going out for a walk with all of them, that gives me great peace every day.
My greatest source of anxiety is?
When those nasty storms are coming close to a community, when a tornado warning has been issued and you look at the area of rotation and whether there is a tornado that has been confirmed or where there is radar indicated rotation, that gives me anxiety because I think of all of those communities that are in the path of those storms as if my family is living there.
And you don't sleep when there's bad weather.
I
you said.
never sleep. I haven't slept in months because of our severe weather season this year. That's why a lot of meteorologists look forward to winter, because we actually get a little bit of a break until the snowstorms
For
come.
someone who hasn't been sleeping in months, you look very refreshed.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
My favorite thing to do in my spare time is?
I love to watch TV. I love to binge watch different shows, taking the dogs for a walk, and of course, still looking at weather information. I never tend to get a break from it. Usually one of the first things that I do whenever I get up every morning is I look at what the weather is going to do.
If you are not a meteorologist, what would you have become?
I am blessed to be following a path that I love to do. I would not have it any other way. I think if I wasn't a meteorologist, I would be a teacher.
Teaching what?
Probably elementary education.
Oh.
I love the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade years.
Okay.
They are always so wonderful. And even 1st grade, I mean, elementary school, period.
So where can we expect Lisa Teachman to be in 20 years?
I still hope to be working at KSN, maybe in the path of retirement, I don't know.
You keep pushing for that higher raise from Steve South, aren't you?
No, the thing is, I'm one of those types of people that, you know, once I find my groove, once I find what I like doing it's hard to get me to stop. It really is.
What's your philosophy of life, if you have one?
Always be happy and have no regrets. If I look back over my life, there are very few regrets that I have. Maybe putting some sunblock on my arms and not getting that bad sunburn in Utah many, many decades ago. That would be one of the regrets that I would have. But I think everybody should be happy. Like when it comes to your job, when it comes to your family, life is too short. I've had friends that have been taken away from me way too young, and I think that you should live life to the fullest.
So what has been the most defining moment of your life?
Becoming chief. It really has been. I never thought that I would become a chief meteorologist. I thought, okay, working mornings in Kansas City, I am happy, I am content. We've got our little family here. I never pushed myself to get to that level, and I'm glad that I did. And I'm glad that I had the support of my family to professionally get to that next spot.
Is there anything else you'd like the public to know about you?
I love country music.
So you've been watching country music on PBS?
I have been.
Ken Burns.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Love country music. Whenever Reba McEntire came to Wichita when I was a kid, my dad always went with me every time. You know, when you talk about regrets, this may be a regret too, but I made up for it years later. I was part of her fan club. Mm-hmm. I was probably 10 or 11, so I was really, really shy. And I had these roses that I was going to give to her. And I chickened out. I chickened out. And years later, I was able to interview her. And I said, hey, this, you know, I'm kind of making up for what I did when I was 10 or 11. And, you know, the nerves were gone and all that kind of stuff. And I was able to make up for it. She laughed at it, and she thought that that was really sweet. She was a real sweet lady.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you, Lisa Teachman.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure having you. And thank you for watching this edition of One on One. If you have a question or comment, please drop us a line, oneonone@kpts.org. We enjoy hearing from you. I'm Victor Hogstrom. Until next time, take care, and I'll see you again soon.